Hi everyone, my name is Rhonda Seitz and this is my lesson plan for Education 390. This lesson's title is What are your color of your eyes? And it's an integrated math and science lesson. The lesson objectives here are for students to observe varying eye colors among their peers, predict the likelihood of an eye color, and compare eye colors by collecting data with regards to hypothesizing offspring's color of eyes, whether they have blue, green, or brown eyes, and record and interpret that data and organize it into graphs and predict the probability of that outcome. You can see that this meets the next generation standards listed here and the California Mathematics State Standards here. And the measurement of the learning outcomes, and students will be able to demonstrate their comprehension of understanding of their Punnett squares and how hereditary traits are passed on. And this is key. This is exactly it in a nutshell. They will be able to hypothesize, collect, and compose the information into fractions and percentages, which is the math component, and students will be able to interpret that data and demonstrate a mastery of integrated use of computers and technology while working within small groups and larger group applications. They will be able to articulate their interpretation of data and apply it to graphs. So right here you can see the description of the habits of mind and the basic materials that you will need. You will need either a pad of sticky notes or 4-inch squares of white pieces of paper will work absolutely fine. Your classroom computers, a worksheet, which one I have developed, the other one's just some questions, paper and pencils and more pens. So you can see the vocabulary list is basically anything to do with recessive and gene traits, some things that your children need to know. And the first thing I'm going to do is you can either do this on the classroom whiteboard or you can present it in a video form. At this age group, they should know how to convert their fractions, decimals, and percentages. But if you want to refresh their knowledge of this, you can do that by introducing this video, which I will not bore you with a lot of it, but you can see how this goes about.
A sign that you might see would say 50% off, but you could go on the other side and you would see a sign that said half off. And essentially what they are is they're two numbers that represent the same quantity. So that's what we are going to focus on, is converting from decimals to fractions to percentages. So let's just go ahead and take an example. Let's take a decimal 0.75. If I want to convert this to a percentage, all I have to do is take the decimal place and move it to the right 2 times and add the percent symbol. So I move it 1, 2, and then I add the percent symbol. So this becomes 75%. Now, if I want to take this number and convert it to a fraction, what I do is I take the original number 75 and I put it over 100.
And as you can see, she's going to go ahead and
this is a correct fraction, but it's not in reduced form.
So
if I want to reduce the fraction,
so you can see how that's going to maintain. As I said, you can continue to do this, or you can basically they do have an understanding at this age, but check for their understanding and proceed. So after I do that, I'm going to begin the science activity with a question. I like to tell them a personal story. It kind of relates to my life. For this activity, I will tell them that when I was pregnant with my son, I predicted that he would have brown eyes just like his mom and dad, and that I was surprised that he has blue eyes. And I will pass around a photo of both my husband and I and our brand new baby and show them that indeed we both have brown eyes, and that my son does indeed have blue eyes, and confide that oftentimes people will ask me, well, where did those blue eyes come from? This is where you can explain that for every characteristics from our eyes to the shape of our nose, each parent contributes one gene. This gene may be strong, which is dominant, or weak, which is recessive. For example, with eye color, brown and green are dominant over blue, which is recessive. If even one of the 2 eye color genes a person receives is brown or green, then his eye color will be brown or green. But if a person receives a recessive gene, which is in the case of my son, blue eyes, then he will have blue eyes. So at this point, you're going to want to, and this is very easy. Most times you have two students at a desk, so it's not going to take very much effort. You're going to split the students into groups of two, and you're going to pass out a sticky note, or two sticky notes, actually three per two person group. And at that point, you're going to, I'll show you on this form, you're going to determine, you can probably, I would pre-print one and determine whether or not that person has brown, green, or blue eyes. The second one is going to be blank. And you can have your students do this on paper, but because this lesson is asking for a computer-based component, there is a program for this as well, and I will show you that as well. So you can explain to these students that basically they are going to be parent one, and their partner is parent two. So each one of them will have a little bit variance with their sticky note and their Punnett square. But as you can explain, that once you fill out the data between, for this parent, this was a green-eyed parent, and this one was a blue-eyed parent, that when they are combined between the two parents, that the likelihood of them having a offspring is about a 50% chance that they're going to have green eyes, or the other 50% they're going to have blue eyes. Okay, so as you see, you would continue on to the we portion of this lesson, and I would explain to students that by making my own prediction that my son would have brown eyes, I was creating a hypothesis, making a prediction or guess of an outcome. And like I said, you can either draw this Punnett square on the whiteboard, or you can lead the classroom into a discussion and to another website for the genetics. And this is basically the information that I've already said. But what I like about this opportunity is that you can either do this as a class, or when you dismiss them to their classroom, their group, they will have their classroom computers there. And they can enter the eye color of the mother and the father, and they're going to get an outcome. This produces an outcome for them. And they can see basically how this is going to work. So you can continue on with the guided practice and your groups of two, and pass out the filled Punnett squares, like I said. And there's also a worksheet with questions that they're going to be able to examine their genotype outcome probabilities of this offspring with this single trait, and crossing their multiple traits of each parent, and state their expectations of what they think their offspring is going to be. So after they've made their prediction, you can lead them to this site, or they can do this again on their own. Let's see if this computer is going to freeze up or not. But what I really want to focus on, they can watch this video, and here's the exact example I gave you with my my document, that that there's going to be a 50% right here, 50% chance of their outcome. They're going to have a green-eyed child or a blue-eyed child. But what you want them to do is within these four groups, kind of have them, it's a visual representation of what their outcome may be, okay? And have them identify with that, which is very important. So the computer component of this would be for them to make their own Punnett square right here on this website. So they would be filling this in and combining their group of two, the traits of each parent, and they're going to come up with their own Punnett square, which they can either print, but like I said, they're going to have a hard copy or a post-it note for that is already, but it does give them some technology in how to process their data. Okay, so once they've done that, you're going to want them to go through a worksheet, which, and I've already done this with the last website, identifying what their eye colors are representative between the two groups of children and what their offspring would be. And it's kind of nice to establish this because most children don't look at each other's eyes. And it prompts them to make observation about one another and kind of form a hypothesis about what they think their offspring is going to be. The second half of the worksheet is going to be utilized for the data entry, and they are going to enter that. Okay, so for example, in a class of 30 students, hypothetically, we may have 20 students with brown eyes and 6, and as an instructor, you're going to be controlling this number. Okay, so 6 with green eyes and 3 with blue eyes. Of the offspring, 8 are going to have brown eyes, hypothetically. It's going to be a lot of variables here, which is great, and it's going to show children how to work with their numbers here. And they're going to get this kind of number variation. Okay, so for example, in a class of 30 students, hypothetically, we may have 20 students with brown eyes, 6 with hazel, which is green, and 4 with blue eyes. And when we complete this, we're going to have all this data collected. And at this point, you're going to check for their understanding and visually assess their observations through a discussion. I would suggest putting this on a whiteboard, or if they have a science notebook, having them translate the entire class's information at this point. Okay? So you're going to allow for the students to do that, and you're going to have them look at this website. And it's establishing, this gives them kind of a different rein on how they're going to work with this data, but it's a mini lab or all on its own. And they can go in and do all this work here, which is this lesson will probably take 2 to 3 classes, and then they can either print it, but it does give you the Punnett square and the possible phenotype, and it's going to give them a replication of what information they put in, and it's a great resource here. So at that point, you're going to have this discussion, or they're going to discuss it within their group. After the students have collected all this data and the last thing you're going to do is because the data will be established on the whiteboard, or as I said, you're going to have them put this in their science notebook. The last website that I want you to look at here is a online component where they are able to select creation of their graphs via a bar, line, and I would say the third one applicable for this lesson would be a pie chart, okay? And that will give them opportunity to work with the computer technology component. After that, their last assignment would be for their homework, and they're going to do this Punnett square worksheet at home. And that's it. And you can check for your understandability through this worksheet, as well as the first worksheet and the information and questions that were posed in that second worksheet. Thank you for joining me for my lesson. I hope you understand it. If you have any questions, which I'm sure you will, please let me know. And I'm sure I look forward to answering them for you. Have a great day.